Raad, thank you so much for joining us. I am really excited to hear your story. What you're going to share with us today is going to hopefully help a lot of people to understand what's been going on in the world, because I think the blinds have been down for so long. So if you just want to share a little bit about your background so people can know where you're coming from.
Yes, I always am in this essence of channeling source, of channeling what some would call your higher self, because all these words lead to the same place. You can say God, consciousness, awareness, higher self. This is the premise of spirituality and evolution, and I'm always in that essence, or always regaining the awareness, the focus, because that's your primary power here, is your belief, your focus, your attention. So I always get back and create that inner space, because that's where you can kind of not get pulled in by a vortex of the mind or any implant from the matrix or the lower plane of existence. So you're coming less from memory and habit, and you're actually going more from intuition and the space of God. So my work, I always say I work for God, because for me anything else sounds flawed. So, and that's not in a mental way, just on a heart level. So yeah, I do sessions with clients, and I remove implants, entity attachments. I do astrology readings. I use astrology in a way that hasn't really been used on this planet, especially in the recent 1 or 2 thousand years. It's with a combination of aspects in the chart and alignment on the chart and how it goes with the being, and then sensing on a psychic level with their palm. I also do a palm reading, how they connect to other lives, because past lives are not what we think they are. It's not like you're going back somewhere. Past lives, you connect to them in the moment. This is why, like, the essence of Jesus, for instance, you can connect to now, and even communicate, which I do from time to time as a channel, directly with any of these higher beings, because it's all available here and now. And the access point is the essence of God, which is the awareness. So when you're aware of something, it's not tied to time. That's why, like, you know, being so stuck on a schedule or linear is one of the things you have to evolve from, because that is just a hindrance. It binds you to the reptilian agenda, because they want you very much in the opposite way of your natural flow. For some, that could be, waking up at the same time all the time. For some, it could be changing how they wake up physically. It could be different dreams, having time to focus on those dreams. And also, you'll notice the resting is always changing when you go to rest in this body. That is from my own focus. I've noticed the energies in space with the planets and the moon, because humans are so directly connected with the moon. It's actually very ironic that we don't focus on that subject enough, because the moon dictates at least 50% of the actions, the state, the emotions, the physicality, the mentality of humans, always, even in this moment right now. And that's not just astrology, that's also from the dark side of the moon. There are implant devices that the reptilians have put there, and some know it as like the device that pulls souls back to the earth. There's multiple things there, and then there's heavy energies there to create distortion and alter your dreams, especially if you're not protecting your energy, if you're more in a chaotic state. So what I do with I create videos on YouTube, on TikTok, channeling transmissions to kind of clear that essence as much in an acute way as possible, so that beings, even if they don't have a lot of physical focus, because one of the things in that reptilian agenda is to have the overstimulation, constantly no attention span, because then humans are much more susceptible to being influenced. But when they regain their focus, and because when they see videos like my own or any other being who's creating very high vibrational messages, very highly potent focus points to expand the awareness, right? That's what I do in my sessions. I expand the consciousness, not just removing entities, because when you remove an entity from the auric field, from the aura, the energy body, or the physical body, what I've noticed is physical sensations will come back to beings, mental blockages will clear. The consciousness will open to be expanded now through knowledge, because what they want to do is create blockages on the knowledge and the openness, because the more open a being is, the more open a human is. That's so powerful, because when you're not closed off, you have the infinite knowing of God alive within you. It starts to wake up. Hence the point, awakening.
Oh. You mentioned the moon being a big influence. What is it about the moon specifically?
The moon controls the tide of the ocean, and the human body is made up of majority water. And then also, water has a lot of the essence of God. It is, I would say, the most potent element where God is present as consciousness here through water. This is why they've done a lot of things to influence the water and people's homes and what they drink, especially, so forth, because water, it carries such a vibratory access point to the energy field. The first thing God placed on this planet was water. After some surface was placed there, energies, spirit beings were intertwined in that consciousness as water, and it went into the planet. That's where also the moon is correlated with the essence of the earth through the ocean. There's so much more when it comes to the earth that we don't know about. When you go into the earth from Antarctica through other points in the Middle East, where beings from Atlantis went after they left, after they survived what happened there. They went into the earth, and that's where other civilizations have existed at very advanced civilizations. And these beings, they know about these things. What we're talking about right now, about awareness, energy, focus, psychic abilities, the moon, it's all here and available on a constant basis. It's not in a cage. And what they've done in the last, especially 2,000 years, but you could say close to 9,000 years, is put beings, when they come to this earth experience, human experiment, they put them in a cage, and that blurs the perception, because the true empowerment is when you realize the lens of perception is the presence of God and your connection point to source. But that is what they've done all of their effort to try and distort. Now, to relate it to the moon, the light side of the moon, where does the light come from? The sun. The
Yeah.
sun is a portal for source. Each star is a direct portal to higher timelines, different existences. It's boundless. And that energy, this is why a lot of species on the earth rise with the sun, right? It's so correlated with life. The sun is more masculine, the moon is more feminine. This is purposeful. This is the duality. And this is how, when you're in harmony with both as awareness, as presence, and you're connected to the energies of both, not just through grounding, but also through being involved on a spacious level with the presence of the moon. Because when the moon is in a certain sign and at a certain point of illumination, each day, each week, certain things are happening to the body, to the mind, to the ego, to the spirit on so many different levels. So if we can't begin to look at the premise of the purpose of why the moon is here, and the moon is hollow, it's not what we think it is. It's more of a device, but it's not sinister only. That's why it's duality, where you only see one side, because the sinister, more malicious aspects of it are on that side that remains hidden by the shadow forces. You see shadow, darkness, dark side of the moon, duality. Light side of the moon, consciousness, intuition. The moon is also very connected with intuition. So is the ocean. That's why many beings, when they live by the ocean or they're in the energy field, they're feeling more connected. It's also cleansing. So there's so many powers of it. And this is another reason why they've made beings so disconnected from the natural presence around them, by putting them in these blockades, these barriers, where the obstacles seem so dense that they seemingly can't center themselves. Because when you center yourself and you focus on these more enlightening energies in space and any star system in your astrology chart with the numbers that the universe is always showing you, because they communicate through numbers. The universe does not communicate through words. It communicates through numbers. We use words as a rejuvenation point for manifestation and to communicate with each other. But numbers is actually much more precise at delivering messages, because it's so expansive. They can give you three at once and you add them together, similar to how you do your life path number with the birthday. You just add all the numbers. That's how you have to look at, like, when you're seeing the clock. Let's say right now it's 4:45. So what does that equal? 4 is 8, and then you have 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yep.
add it together and get the number that the universe is carrying to you. 4, 8 with 5 is 13. One, and that's already a very purposeful number. But then to even broaden it, 1 and 3 when you get 13 is 4. So 4, there's several meanings for that. Each number has duality in it. So there's a dark energy and a light, uplifting energy. So 4, it's right before that middle point where you get up the ladder. You get up the point from 1 to 9. 5 is that middle point about, and 4 is right there where you have to overcome anything that seems to pull you into obsession or fixation with giving yourself to that system, because that system is around that 5 point. 5 is a very dark number, but it also carries the essence of change. So that's the duality. So when you can use 5 to change, and you can shift and jump and alter the trajectory, then you get past 6. Jesus died at 33. 3 is 6. 6, when you flip it, is a 9. 9 is the highest number, higher mind, God. That's the end of it. After that, it resets 1, 0. There's no new numbers. So we have to learn to look at numbers that way too. It's not just the moon, it's numbers. It's because the duality in the clock is that it can consume you, control you by you being debilitated on a schedule, like identified and constantly in that module where you're always on paper and you're living only mentally. They create a false comfort there purposefully, because when you're in that false comfort, you're essentially saying, okay, here's my soul, here's my spirit energy, here's my potential, my boundless development, in exchange for your exception rate and a little bit of currency. But we have to readjust our lens of perception, cleanse the lens of perception, and say, wait, this is the old paradigm. That's the old earth. Because on the new earth, you're not following someone else's agenda. You're not following something that's very limiting, right? If we get out of that sense of clock, of time, it wasn't always here. Many beings existed on the earth where they didn't have something like the clock, especially not so constant. It's always in front of you, on the phone, around you. It's purposeful. What is the shape of a clock? It's a circle, keep you on the loop.
It makes sense to me now why they always do their rituals night outside, and and it's to the moon. It's not to the sun.
Right. Yeah, they prefer the darkness because that's where they sprout from. These reptilians, they come from a universe that's very dark. It's not this universe. They came from a void that slipped through space and time. They don't belong here. That's why they don't follow all the same universal laws that humans do. So they have another advantage. They also have abilities that we have not had, in terms of, in regards to being able to project a different body, but they're not changing their form. They can be huge, tall, a bit. If you saw their actual form, you'd feel very uncomfortable. They can be that way, but you're seeing just an average human. This is a systematic approach to influence the lens of perception, because then you're already accepting their agenda unknowingly. You don't know that they're communicating with each other. You don't know that they are actually, many of them come from, there's a big entity, a major entity, and it creates entities. They come out of it, right? And that gives them an advantage because they can surround you without you knowing it. And it's one that's thinking everything, that's managing you, right? That's why, have you heard the term handler? that
Yep.
some beings, yes, they have that this is very purposeful. And I want to also make it clear, I want to really eliminate so much of the blur and any contrast. The truth is, what Jesus overcame when it comes to Satan, when it comes to the snake, what species is a snake, right? Reptilian. And also, one thing I always find fascinating, I like to point out, a snake is stuck on the ground. It's one of the few that really can't go anywhere else, correct? This is because they cannot ascend to the new earth. They cannot ascend levels beyond the lowest plane of existence. So God is very ironic. He loves humor in certain ways. So that's why they're stuck on that level. It's not Jesus didn't have to overcome a creature that can fly around him. It was a snake, especially at the end of his life, several times that came to him speaking. And this is because they can't leave that lower plane. So they want to do everything they can to pull a being down. If you start becoming more in harmony, which is timeless, it's not on a clock, it's timeless, you're an ascension. And that's what you get. In a moment, I can speak about what death is because I've experienced it more than once. And I know as consciousness where you go, what the ether is like, the difference. We have to overcome the fear of death because when you go into the body, when you start your life, the veil starts to thicken. You're surrounded. Usually, you're born in a space where very near or near enough are reptilians or are dense and other entities, beings, programs. That's why babies are crying a lot. This is one of the major reasons. And it could be for other souls, specific souls, their first time out of that source connection. So it's already a bit of a shock. And then pretty quickly, a subtle trauma occurs where you think that you will die because you believe you're the body. But God gave you an advantage, not just being consciousness, but in the words, because words, spelling, casting a spell. So the hint in the words is when you say, my body, you're separate from it already. You're claiming it. It's very obvious, very subtle. But if humans could gather that, we're going to have this much space be created in the awakening imminently, instantly, because you're saying it all the time. You say, my body is in pain, or my body is going through something right now. The body is tired. It's the body. The consciousness doesn't necessarily get tired unless a certain amount of programming is done. Then the mind energies, you just want to escape, to go to rest. But when you rest, the body is resting, the spirit, you go somewhere else to another dimension. That's what a dream is. And time is not what we think it is. So you can go to other dimensions, other timelines. It's not here. It's not here. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. So you can go anywhere, and it's all inner. I'm making it seem now like it's external. It's more of an internal experience. When you dream your connection to the universe, I want you to see it as though it's a river that's going, every river, each river leads to the ocean. So you will return to source once you expand through these paths. The subconscious, which does control majority of your dreams, it's always speaking to you. And this energy, this system that was placed there is very innocent, but it's extremely intelligent. And it knows what to show you. And then it's your responsibility through your awakening, through your development with the spiritual enhancement, to evolve to where you can understand, you can decipher, discern, what are these dreams? I'm seeing beings or apparent beings. I'm seeing, humans, people that I haven't seen in years. I'm seeing people I haven't seen in years. Why are they showing up here still? Maybe there was a deeper rupture point with the inner child at a certain point. That's why you're seeing these timelines, these things playing out, right? Now, when you have a nightmare, that has to do more with the reptilian implants on the moon, entities around you, and then also the programming by watching scary movies, by constantly swiping on this phone. I discovered something recently in the recent months that it's imperative to share. When people are swiping on their phone, I want to say a few things about the phone, but first this, when they're swiping on the phone, what direction is it going? Down to up.
Mm-hmm.
The metaphysical purpose of that is they are influencing you to send your more root energy where you're on their plane, where they are adjusting your frequency constantly with what they do with the music and all of their things that they have here. You're in that density, and then your abilities are always wanting to uprise through the root chakra, and each chakra, they're all connected to the spine. When you breathe, you send that energy up, and the energy body, the consciousness expands. So that's up, that's down to up. What does that sound like? First of all, you always hold the phone in front of you, consciousness focused on it. iPhone, third eye. Now, I will also want to intertwine with this something about the letters and words that I mentioned earlier. This is something every being needs to learn. They don't teach children this on purpose with numbers, with letters, but this is very useful if you can start to do so. iPhone, this is how you would read the energy of that. What stands out in front of it is I. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Ninth letter. So they are using the duality, because not everything with technology is horrible, right? It's the way it's been processed, because there's a duality. We can have something like this, right? Something that, like on my channel, what I create, or any being, if they're really creating from truth, that's a duality, because technology can be used to widely awaken any embodiment, any being, when they regain their empowerment, their focus. But so the ninth letter, what they're doing is they're taking that energy of 9 and they're flipping it back down to 6, putting you under 7, which is the Saturn energy that these entities worship. 7 is also connected with the concept of time, that they put you in the clock, the loop, the reptilian agenda. They worship Saturn, all of the celebrities, icons, they're conning you, deceiving you. And it also has which letter in it? iPhone, icon. See, this is the humor of God, because he has to approve it. He has to approve it before it's there. So since it's approved already, now it's just about, when do you wake up to see these signs, these subtle hints that are there on a universal level? Because when you enhance your seeing, you say, wait, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Why are they called icons? If you look at the words, con means deceive, liar, right? So these ones that we're worshiping aren't what they think. How do they relate to cloning? How many of them are there in one? How many times have they been duplicated since their original self? And also, what are they originally? And then if you really want to be very clear with what are these celebrities or the ones making music, look up things about shapeshifting. Look up moments where you can see certain reptilian adjustments occur within them. I want to be very careful with what I say here, but because I don't like naming names, you can find it for yourself. Also, the news. There's many times in the news where they're following the same script across the whole country. You can see hundreds of them saying the same exact paragraph. That's very suspicious. And then even more suspicious than that, you can see when the pixels and the apparent human that you're seeing starts to break down. This is a reptilian sign, because what's happening is their abilities, it's not perfect, y'all. It's not perfect. So, and this also law of balance, you have to see it. You have to see, this is disruption points to that rhythm that you fell into, that lower vibration of just believing everything because they took your belief. But as children, you're not given a chance, because you're thrown out into the system. That's why on the new earth, the children will be taught the things we're discussing here, higher things, inner, universal, up and in, not down and out, but up and in. And then the out will be a reflection of the divine. But they put you into limited time and learning false knowledge, and all the history they removed, about Atlantis, other civilizations, the truth of what Jesus taught, everything with religion, music, it's all intertwined to alter your trajectory, your path into a more influenceable point, because you're believing something that you don't question. But once you start to ask the questions again, and you see these synchronicities, so like, I want to get back about the phone. It's very important, because most of the time beings are holding a phone. The hands are portals to the sun. So the soul energy, the spark, am I going too far right now? Should I?
You can carry on.
Okay.
We're listening. Yeah.
I know it's a lot of different things, but it's all leading to the same place, I promise. The soul energy here, it sits here, heart chakra. That's where the soul goes. It's the halfway point between the crown chakra, root chakra, the solar plexus, heart chakra area. It's very imperative, that area. They want to block it to where you stay on that root chakra. The red has you living dead if you're always just in that. And it's also closed, the root chakra, but they have you on that level of the sphere in fear, because you have to overcome fear. And that survival state is all root chakra, red survival state. If people are constantly looking to stay in the most dense way possible in that loop, that's all root chakra. Here is ascension, empowerment, DNA, source connection, unconditional love, speaking your truth, witnessing these entities as I am speaking about right now, and then complete divine empowerment and union with your source. Now, what they want to do is take you out of these and put you here. The relevance of what I'm saying is the heart chakra is where the soul is. So if you do this, if it stretches out from here, right? Even. This is in complete alignment. The body, it could be millions of different ways. It's this way for a reason. It's in alignment with where the heart chakra is. This projects that light. So when you're shaking hands or you're holding a phone, you're giving your light access points away constantly. It was all done to induce you in that way of putting yourself into that system. These are very important. This is why, like when I do a palm reading, I'm seeing images. I'm not looking. Nothing I do is taught on paper for the most part. I'm looking at images that go in through other dimensions, past death, other lives, other spirit experiences, because you're a spirit being having a physical experience. You're not a physical being having a spiritual experience. No, you're a spirit being because of the awareness. This is your proof, that empowerment within the awareness. So that's how you can sense these energies. Now, the masculine energy of the sun goes out through the hands, and you can actually manifest through. This is how healing can also be done in certain ways with the body, with other energies around you. This is how I do certain entity removal. I can do certain things that pull these cords, because they create these dense cords, these reptilians, the entities, trauma points. They create trauma in the childhood. This is because that's going to create a weakening point, right? To where you're debilitated into their cycle much more. And what does the word cyclic have in it? Cyclic, sick, right?
Just a question. If you remove an entity, does it not leave a gap where it was before? Like if it was in your system, that it now opens up? Yeah, because there was a trauma point, right? So you remove the entity, but that trauma is still not healed, or is it now healed?
That's a great question. So when you remove that trauma point, I said earlier the word rupture. So what happens is there's a disruption, a rupture, a more disconnect from spirit, where they lessen you. Two key words here before I move forward. A minute ago I said weakened. So they weaken you on the weekend. That's why they have people going out and consuming alcohol and going to a concert. Icons perform concerts, because the music, they do these things with the frequencies, which I can get to later if you want to know more about, where they specifically alter your adjustment points, your chakras, your cells. These are all the reptilians. It's what they do, because they use this knowledge, but the power is with you, because when you become aware of it and you start to enhance yourself, you're creating space. So to answer your question, when you remove, like when I would remove, typically it would usually be in some chakra or body part, anywhere in the energy body. I'll see it. Not always physical. It's not just physical body. It could be energy body in the aura. It's more of an implant, similar to what the moon has. They put it in your auric field. I've had them around me before, and even in the physical body, I've felt them, like they do certain things. But the physical body ones are typically not malicious. They are usually from the more benevolent beings, where they actually can give you certain enhancements and monitor your progress on a physical level, because they're here from a distance and they're within, but they're not physically around you, because we are the ones that have dipped ourselves into the illusion. And that's why any being who comes to experience human life, they look at you with honor. Wow, it's very honorable, because you're going into the realm of deception and you're going to have the veil. The veil thickens each time the trauma happens. That works to the entity's advantage. But what doesn't work to their advantage is when beings are awakening to this knowledge, the awareness of, you'll sense it if you can just meditate, and not in meditation. I don't want it to be seen as such a traditional one way aspect. You can meditate. I've developed it to where I can do certain things in 1 minute or 10 seconds that it would take maybe 5 years ago, 8 years ago, it would have taken me 10 minutes or 30 minutes to do. I can do it in 1 minute. That doesn't mean there aren't advantages in taking that time, but if in certain moments you're really caught up in the activity, you can actually center yourself, adjust, expand the space with certain metaphysical abilities of these senses. But how can you do that if your space is full of clutter from these atrocious entities that have slipped to this time to pull you into a deception of time, using words, numbers, frequencies against you? Food, consumption, density, but programming, especially the programming of the fixation. This keeps you on the third DNA strand, three-dimensional. So you have to expand your DNA strands. That's another thing I do in the sessions, is because beings are typically on 3 or 4 and they want you there. But if you get closer to 8 to 12, what's going to happen is you are going to start to live similar to Jesus, similar to other enlightened beings, awakened beings, where you regain sensations, awakening awareness within you, regaining your powers. Each human is different. Each body is different, but it's one consciousness. Because what do we share? The commonality is the consciousness, right? And the love of God gives the consciousness. That's the mercy. That's why Jesus represents mercy. Jesus is known as the angel of mercy. This is because it's all leading to the same place. They altered his words because they want to use it as a mechanism to keep you worshiping something outside of yourself, which he says the opposite. He's telling me right now, you only worship what gives you life. That's why, and that will remove your strife. That's why I always say I work for God.
How would you close up that rupture? You've now removed the entity. How does it prevent other entities from coming in?
That's where I'm very glad you want to add more clarity to that. That's where the energies of color come in. You see, as humans, you only see certain colors. There's many that exist in these dimensions, but we only see certain ones for a reason. So if it's someone, what I'll see often is something here, throat chakra. That's where I had to remove something's blocked, or solar plexus, which is your confidence, the inner child. It gets removed, and then what happens is you slip into more density further down in the body. But what happens is once these things are removed, there's a space for God to start to work. There's a space for the universe to start to adjust and cleanse. What I do is I use not just light and channeling these higher energies, but I also, when I'm working with a client, the colors are so important. So like even fruit is all, it's these, it's all, they each have a color for a reason. So when you consume them, you can actually speak to the fruit and put your focus, just like you can speak to your cells. And you have to create new cells. You have to learn to, once this is removed, whatever it was around it, what I'll do is put a certain energy of like blue, for instance, a blue light. Both beings, because this has been done for thousands of years, if 2 or 3 beings focus on the same thing at once, what happens is the intention from the universe is so powerful that it doubles, maybe it goes even further than that in the moment. So much healing can come. That's why Jesus could only heal ones who believed.
Yeah.
He didn't heal everyone.
Is there a reason that they go for the throat specifically? Is that because that would keep you quiet, or what, stop you from speaking your truth?
Yes. And also, what is this? This connects the higher, like right now, I'm speaking primarily, 75% of everything that's coming in right now is from here. Crown chakra, white light, also purple. powerful colors. You use them here, adjustment points, and you expand it. So like right now, I'm actually doing things to the energy and I'm feeling it. And that's one thing I do in the sessions to answer your question further, is that not just colors, but the sensations when you awaken. Because when you remove these, think about it like this. It's doing this. So when you remove that, it starts to awaken these access points, either the throat, it can be anywhere on the spine, the sacral chakra, which I've seen a lot, which is the womb, which is the creative energy. A lot of women will have that issue because they want to really possess that area. That's where they can continue to loop. That's why then what happens is, and I'll get back to the point in a minute, but what happens is then the children are carried in that area. That's the sacral chakra area, the womb, and then the mother is not healed yet. And the father is not aware either most of the time until this point. So that cycle is continued because then the child picks up everything on the DNA level, on a level of the aura, the mind, the trauma of the generational trauma, generational karma. They're taking it all. That's why you hear about the waves of certain spirits going into the human experience, because certain ones have the purpose of cleansing with that awakening, that removal of the entities by saying, okay, I'm going to actually invest in my spirituality, my evolution, and getting a book and watching videos for hours in meditation and getting a session, these kinds of things. Because when you get out of constantly being delivered into the lower loop of the three-dimensional plane where you're consuming, you're working for someone else. Because if you're working for someone else, this is the entity system and this is you, and it's doing that. This is why we have to really start to do this over these next 1 to 7 years, in between, even months. You have to start. You're noticing it's naturally happening. You're noticing time is changing. It's very fast. The last 2 months has felt like maybe a week, for me at least. This is the illusion. It's proof. You're living proof, because you're seeing that, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Time right now doesn't feel at all like it was 3 years ago. Not even close. This is because of what's happening with the stars, the planets, the divine awakening, the ascension of the collective consciousness. That's all about new earth transition. The old earth are where these calamities will happen, like with Atlantis, which we can get to if you want to speak about what happened there. They had all these abilities, telepathy, but certain things happened, and then that ended. Most of them disappeared, and which has happened with other civilizations before. And so the throat chakra, I never want to forget a question because I can get carried away easily. The throat chakra, when it's closed, this area is that connection point to the higher, to the lower. This is the truth, right? Why is it shaped like this? Why is it leading everything in that way? So what they want to do is block that, put trauma points there, put fear there, disconnect you, because this is your connection. What happens if it's a disconnection? Disease, right? So distortion. Do you see how the words have this subtle texture, this subtle message always in them? Like I said with Khan earlier. Mm-hmm. Conforming to their agenda. Distortion, disease. Disintegrate, disconnect. What happens is these words, these energies of these words and numbers and frequencies and trauma will lower you, and it kind of does something to dampen your senses to your connection to source, your empowerment. Another huge factor that we have to acknowledge here is the imagination. When children come here, they have such an imagination, but the entity does everything they can to quickly. That's why I like that learning system. It will not be on the new earth. Everything about that learning system, this is a very big statement I'm making here, but it's the truth. Everything about that learning system, at least 98% of it, is demonic. It's satanic. It's a ritualistic approach to take you out of the space of God and throw you into the working system, learning system, being a servant to the serpent. They're teaching false knowledge. They don't teach you about how to use numbers, how to connect with your energy, how to connect with God, why you're here, awakening your senses, expanding, creating from that power. They have you noticed? They teach all of the opposite. They want you linear, straight on paper. This is purposeful. This is why they distort the numbers. They want children learning how to do things with shapes and numbers and making these points. Forget all of that. Learn how to read the signs and connect with your own numbers, that you're here on a karmic level to remove the karma and then adjust the frequencies of the true vitality of these numbers with your energy body. The reason this is open right now is so I can speak this. If I was doing this years ago, I wouldn't have been able to speak 80 to 100% of any of this. Because at a certain point I was living so much from here, but then you got to work on these other parts. You got to bring focus to not just the trauma. It's not just trauma. It's also implants. It's density, programming. You got to expand the DNA. You have to speak to your cells, because the cells are like beings in the universe of the body, and they are only aware of what you send them. Like the universe sends you signs, you're sending it signs, because the body is the vehicle for consciousness.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned something earlier about asking the right questions, and I think that is so important, because it's not, we get taught not to ask questions at all. So how would someone know what the actual right question is? Like, what would be a right question?
God, Jesus, just told me to tell everyone this. Do this. Anyone who's here, do this. If you tap on the crown chakra, you can also tap here, and wherever you're pulled intuitively to do, you're opening your channel. I am not the only one that can do this. Any being can do this. The channel is your connection, is your passage to your source, but they block it with these programs. So how do you know the questions to ask? Do things like tapping, focus, open the sensations. Like in a session, what I'll do is I'll purposefully pause at certain points and send energies to these points so that they can feel things they haven't felt before. And it's good because that's automated awakening points from the universe. And a lot of this was, you signed before this life to agree to have these potential dimensions that you align with. Nobody would be seeing this message right now unless they were meant to, unless they were designed on another level, right? You know about soul contract. Unless they were designed to have this to filter out the false, then they wouldn't see it. They're supposed to awaken, right? And one thing I always ask my clients or any being I'm discussing with, I'll say, if it comes up, I'll say, do you want to live another life here? Right? Because most will say no. Most will say no. Some will hesitate, but most will say no. And the reason that's important is because you've got to set an intention consciously, your focus on what's important to you, your evolution, truth, or that play. Because the devil can only torment you if you like what he's offering. And it's very subtle. He doesn't just have to offer money like he does these celebrities. He can offer you so many things. Mental projections, memory loop programs that were there to try and fill the void that the trauma created. But if you do the energy work through your own development, through your own focusing, these trauma points, these voids, instead of avoiding the void, you stop concealing it and you heal it. And once you heal it through the colors, through the numbers, through the knowledge, through the focus, the attention, the regaining the senses, through going back to what that point is exactly when it happened. It could be when someone is 1. It could be at 8. It's typically in those first 1 to 7 years. They love those years, these entities, because what the parents will do unknowingly is send the children out there when they're innocent to the unconscious realm. And basically what you're doing with the children is you're putting them out there and you're telling that entity, do as you wish. They can't defend themselves. So one of my purposes here is to actually shut down that system. It will happen. That whole system has to fall. Because the first 7 to 18 years, anywhere in between, the spirit needs those years to acclimate to the physical body. Let's just say, with higher potential, humans would live 100 years or more. So those first 7 to 18 years, it's imperative to get on the right track, to remove any blockages, to not allow any blockages to take form, right? We can't send them out there into the realm of possessions to be possessed by possessions. The entity offers you possessions in order to have a possession. This is also what happens with alcohol when you go out into the surroundings. So like if a mother, I'll give you an example that I see all the time. If a mother is around beings, or entities, people, whatever they are, it could be a concoction of all of it usually, and there's alcohol involved, then what's going to happen is that entity, even though the mother is not consuming it, the entity has access to the space because she's still most likely unconscious or not fully aware, because if she was fully aware, she wouldn't even be in that space. This is the truth. But what will happen is they access already that creative power. This is why the whole story, which we can also talk about, is they want to shut down the divine feminine, the divine masculine, which is that pure creation, pure connection, imagination. I want to tie one more thing together about the children with the imagination. That is your intuition, your purpose with God, through God, to exist here. And what you do is you do this to it, right? Unknowingly, most likely, but that's what's happening. It's not even you. It's the system that you've been submitted to, but end your submission to the devil and allow your transmission with God.
Well, they don't know better.
Right. That's why Jesus, his last words were, "Forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing."
That's right.
They don't know. This is why he said that.
How would someone recognize an entity?
Programs, patterns, habits put in place around you, influences around you, mental, internal, external. The most dangerous thing about these entities is they can be directly around you through what you think is family. It's not. There's an 80 to 90% chance, at least, that these ones that cause a lot of issues in your life that you think are family, they might not even, like a really good chance, there's not even a soul there. This is something I teach, and it was never my intention to teach this. It just came through with the universe, that the phrase NPC, this is something well known in this modern timeline for a reason, because it's just a trend, but it also creates a major space when you use it. And you see, they represent certain things. You know, they want to keep you in lack, scarcity, fear, survival state. What does that sound like? What did I say in the beginning? Root chakra. They're all operating at that level, and they want to do this to you. There's an analogy that was always used that's very smart, and it's, you'll be in your essence, your natural state, and then you're in the ocean, and then you're drowning. And you go to save one, you think, okay, I'm in this space, this is my life, let me help, or something, whatever, it's similar energetically. You go, and then one starts to pull you, and you're getting kind of pushed down into that abyss, right? And then another 10 pile on there, and then another 10 pile on there. Before you know it, you got 20 on you, entities, programs, projections, and you can't even breathe. You're not even in tune with the atmosphere. The essence, the ethereal realm, your channel, your chakras, everything is blocked. What does that sound like when they're drowning you, when they're doing that? They are suppressing the senses and making you repress yourself into that field of trauma. Your energy field then gets possessed by these entities. So to answer your question, they represent trauma patterns, programs, dark habits like alcohol, like being in fear about money, constantly thinking you got to work just to get by. Demonic. That is demonic. That's not truth. I'm telling you through experience. Everything I say here is not just intellect or devoted knowledge, learning, channeling. That's all there, but it's also because I've experienced it. So I've been able to discern the contrast of what they are. And they will make a play on your innocence by projecting the fact that they seem so innocent sometimes. You got to be very clear with that. This is your final test. Can you get past that acting? They went and hired the best actors for this play. So you have to be able to transcend their debilitating delusion that they throw you into with the intrusion of psychological attacks. The psychological mind is not you. Your mind is not your friend, not yet. You have to know the difference between yourself and your mind. I am consciousness. I am not the mind. Just like you say my body, you say my mind. Do you say my consciousness? That's probably the most unusual thing to say, right? because you are that. That's the life force energy. That's the light source. The life force from source is the consciousness that gives you life, the mercy of God. And the entities, they represent the opposite of that. This is all because it's just like in America is the greatest experiment of all. Not just because it's about, worshiping icons while they make all this money, making music, making you sick, music, music, making you sick. Cool? Okay, so that's there for a reason. So they make all this money doing that. And they're also not necessarily typically consuming these entities, people, reptilian shapeshifters, beings who are drawn into distortion, whatever they are. Right? I'm not making an accusation about anyone specifically or about a group in totality. It's all symbolism anyway, but it is truth. They are doing this. They don't consume the same things that we do because they know better. They have access to certain knowledge. They do things with blood that is actually for their own vitality. And they like youthful beings.
Yeah, it's just shocking. It's just shocking.
And that intertwines with the water, because the same entity doing that set that system up of influence, of altering the frequencies, using the beings as a feeding source, right? The same one who's doing that also manipulates the water. They also influence the purity of what you are around, because everything here has been made impure, but the earth was meant to be a vacation planet at a certain point. It's meant to be the most divine place where you can experience your inner space, but experience physical life. But they've altered it to the opposition. But once you stop working for the enemy, once you stop plugging into the matrix tricks you. So once you stop being deceived by Lucifer, certain beings I've seen, and I don't think they're beings, but certain ones will defend certain words and they'll say, oh no, it doesn't mean what you think. Lucifer, Satan. These are the same ones who are afraid of the word God. So, and I don't want anyone to get caught up in the words. It's all symbolism. It's all contrast, duality, darkness, light, dark side of the moon, light side of the moon, shadow entities. They're all shadow entities, shadow figures. Light being, black, white, hate, love. It's all duality. So let's not get caught up in the words. All right. It's just this entity, whatever you want to call him, it is same thing with God. You don't have to say him. I say him. It's accurate, but at the same time, you can say something else and it's accurate for you. It's about how much in truth it is. Source doesn't mind, right? Just like the universe, consciousness doesn't mind how many lives it takes you to awaken. If you need to keep coming back here and you got to hear another, if you got to experience another mystical being telling you these things and then try and awaken again, then so be it, but you can use it right now, an esoteric appearance, to revive your esoteric essence. You have to revive your life force because you have to win yourself back, because they claim you in that cage known as the simulation, working for someone else, consuming dense things, programming. When you're always doing this, you're adjusting to the programming. What do you usually see here? Materialism, superficial programming, violence, darkness, things that pull you into the lower energies, always. It's for a reason. But then the duality is eventually, maybe you start to see, especially once you click on videos, like on YouTube, for instance, it's a little better because you can actually manage a little better and you have more clarity a bit. And so you start to sense more divine transmissions instead of getting these diabolical plots that are just materialism, superficial entities. What I've noticed, the most dangerous thing is they can create a ripple effect. If you give 1 minute, it can easily turn into an hour. This is one of the most dangerous things. So you got to be clear about what you allow yourself to hear and see. God spoke before he saw anything. His words are, I am. The first words in existence, I am. I am what? I am existence. I am consciousness. As I said that with you right now, I felt the timelines do this. Everything just did that when I said it, right? It's because there's no boundary here. It's not linear. It's not on a clock. That's illusion, illusion. You know, they say the one who invented clocks must have made a lot of money. That's symbolism. That's figurative, because what it's saying is that, yeah, that entity won a lot of power by that deception. But the second we just think about it, like maybe 10 years from now, on the new earth, no more currency as we know it, no more working for a system, at least that's for sure. Everything's shifted into a higher way where beings are trading amongst one another, when things are much more in tune and alignment with the universe, with abilities, right? The rational mind, I hear in many beings that are listening to this right now that are lost still, the entities will speak through you and they'll give you doubt. The word doubt belongs to the devil. The word truth belongs to God. So that rational mind that puts you in that vortex, that's the suppression, that's the entity, the trauma point that I spoke about, right? So the universe built this whole message up so that we can get to this point here. This is the real power point here. The potency of the message is to notice the voice here speaking is very different than the one that's speaking here saying things, right? They're completely different. You see, and that is an energy point. When someone sneezes, when someone yawns, when they cough, certain things are coming up that have to, not just physical things that are stuck, energetic things, right? So what that tells me intuitively is what you just heard created something within you that did it. Imagine everything is like a radio frequency, so you just adjusted it in a major, like instead of doing this slowly, you did, and what that did is it creates these points. Sneezing is purposeful. It's energy coming out. Yawning, you'll notice in like when beings are awakening or they're around something that's happening energetically, higher level, a lot of yawning will happen, coughing, things like this. These are just energies coming out. But what I want to make clear about that rational mind is it doesn't want these things to happen. That's Satan. Satan is the rational mind. Some beings, false spirituality, they will say shadow work. You have to integrate your shadow. This ego, this mind is just trying to protect you. No, that's deception. Y'all have to be very careful with that. You got to know the difference between yourself and that voice. This is why detachment is so important. You know, in manifestation, when they say, and recently I've been making more videos about manifestation, when they say to manifest, you have to know what you're speaking. You also have to be clear about your affirmations. So what happens is when you're letting the rational mind dictate what you believe, what you think, your I am, earlier a minute ago, what did I say? Now we're connecting everything. What I said, God spoke I am when he went into existence. I am presence. I am awareness. I am infinite. These words are more manifestation oriented openings. But saying something like, I have to go work now, or how am I supposed to do this? It's not practical. Satan. This is why Jesus would tell his closest followers when they would speak near him and certain doubts would come up. Like I give one example, beings like examples. So towards the end of his life, when he was getting more clarity, he always knew how he would die physically. But when he was getting more clarity about what would happen, there was a certain thing that happened on a mountain. He would go up to mountains and take certain followers with him and do these higher teachings, transmissions, so forth. And towards the end, something happened with these light ethereal beings that he was speaking with. His followers saw it, and they saw these benevolent essence beings that are there. You can't even fully see it. It's just light. And he's speaking with them there. And then the next morning after that passes, he's telling them, my time here is almost up. They're going to come and take me. And then his closest follower, one of the closest followers, says to him, I'll die before I let that happen. And what did he tell him? He says, begone, Satan. Basically, these are the words. So what that means is he's telling the satanic voice, he's telling the voice of Satan within that individual, get out of individuality, get out of the ego. You don't control this, right? Control con. You are being deceived by thinking you control everything. Your belief you control once you regain your senses, right? Your focus, your space, you can start to adapt and enhance and expand and learn to express. But they repress and compress your abilities through letting that voice speak through you. So that's why he would always make it clear to individuals around him. He would know what they represent. And my book that's going to be published within a year or so, I have many aspects of his life that weren't shown to the public eye here. This is very similar to what I just spoke, but different instances where he's teaching and certain entities try to block his teachings, and then he would point them out and they would be gone because the light is so powerful. So when you're very self-aware, because what Jesus represented is not just mercy, he also represented what it is to be devoted fully to self-empowerment, to the connection with spirit. That's why he had to be tested. Every being has to be tested. Every being goes through conditioning. Conditioning. Every being goes through conditioning. That's the veil.
Yeah. So what could people do to start, like you've mentioned, connect with the senses and everything like that, but how would they start discerning what is truth and what is a lie? What is deceit? Is it just based on how their bodies feel?
That's one of the reasons. The body is one of the most advanced technologies that was ever made. It can heal itself. But the doubt, the density, so get to your question, the doubt, the density, keep the healing from happening, keep the expansion from happening, because when you're not expanding, what are you doing? You're contracting, right? Contracting, deceived. You're lessening yourself. You come here, at a certain point spiritually to learn lessons, but when you're learning a lesson, you're lessening yourself. You see the words, the dualistic approach? God is very intelligent. These words, lessen. You're lowering yourself to a lower plane to play. But at a certain point, when you get out of that play, you're going to start to be able to say, here, you're going to sense when something puts you in a box. So the answer to your question is anything that puts you in a box represents Satan. I will start to simplify these things when I say them.
That's
It's
easy.
very true.
Well, but it's simple to do. It's just a reminder to yourself that that's what it is. Yeah.
Yes, and beings have to start to learn to use crystals. Another thing which I'm doing here, you have to know. So like if you have a blue crystal, you put it around here. And you can also put it in this area. It's all higher, but here it's going to cleanse. It's going to help you connect. Don't just buy crystals. Sense them. Use these, which I mentioned earlier. Sense them.
Yeah.
Crystals, they carry certain energies that connects with Atlantis. That's what they did with Atlantis, how they utilized free energy, how they were manipulating energy to create their own universe, how they went through space and time, and the things that actually led to their demise because greed took over, right? Similar to what's happened here now. And that karma effect actually removed the psychic abilities from humans 9,000 years later. That's what happened. That's why humans are so disconnected, unconscious. Why you need a phone. They didn't need phones then. 9,000 years ago, beings are so awakened. Right now, what I can do with in a line of communication with Jesus or any being, I can do it now. You can do it with anyone who's living on the physical plane with you that you're aware of. If you met them physically, but then you want to communicate in another space, because timelines are not what we think. Like me and you right now can be on completely different timelines, completely different energy field. Yet there's what is that connecting point? The focus, the consciousness, the spirit energy, and the connected awakening, creating something, divine creation. So that enhancement is what actually allows the God within to awaken, right? I am the extension of God. There's an immense contrast in those words that has to be clear. I'm not saying I am God. I am an extension of God. Now, don't get lost in the words, but also understand that there's a major differential in those words. Because what does that mean? You're here experiencing, manifesting. He manifested into existence so that you can experience life. And they always say you're going home, right? But as you're making that journey back, you can forget the journey and skip space and time and be before space and time, because space is the most subtle element and you're aware of it. That's a major hint. You are aware of space. What does that tell you? What are you? Right? You have to know, you have to ask yourself the most important question: who am I? What am I? Who am I? Because you're aware of space. Space is invisible, basically. It's ether. You're aware of it. You say, oh yeah, that's space. That's space up there. These are stars. You're the one aware of it, which metaphysically means that you are more subtle and potent than that. You don't know the power that's here. So we got to get out of that false system of fear, because the power that's here can uplift you beyond space and time. And that's what creates certain awakening points like we're doing here right now.
Well, I am fascinated by all of this, and I would love to get into more detail, but yeah. Okay, so where can people get hold of you?
And they can go to my YouTube channel, Raad Enlightenment. They can email me at radenlightenment@gmail.com. Then they can also see me on TikTok, Raad Enlightenment. These are my 3 access points that I have. The email would be if you want to book a session or collaborate for a creation, and then to see transmissions, videos on the channel.
Perfect. Well, I'll post those links below. And then before we go, do you have a message for our viewers?
Time is not real, because before we started this reflection, divine, all I say in my sessions is I am the divine mirror. So it's just a mirror, right? So what we're doing is we put such focus. The reason I said time is an illusion to give them that final message is because this right now, I felt like maybe 7 minutes passed since we did this. Time, there's such a slippage of time, y'all. You don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Now, someone could also say, he's not grounded. I am very grounded, because my energy is not so scattered right now. That comes with the awareness. You can do things like grounding with the earth, which I do, crystals, focusing on the senses. That also grounds you because you're making yourself comfortable in the body, which they took from the children. They don't give the children that ability to get comfortable in the body. They throw them out there. But that's going to stop here. That's the most powerful thing I told you today. The most powerful thing I told you today is about the children. Stop giving to that system, then Satan loses his control. I want to end it on that. I don't usually make that a premise of my any interview I do, any video I make. I usually don't make it the main point, but it's so important, because if the children, that's all they want, is that cycle continues with that loop. So you got to stop the loop. That is up to you. So if you have children, or if you're going to have children, allow them that first 7 to 18 years to get used to the body, be away from the world, but also experiencing the world in the natural realm, not the unnatural realm of the matrix, because that's ending. There's already many earths in the last year that have faded. That's the old earth timelines that are going into despair, that are ending. So you're already transcending if you're seeing this message. But to go further and to allow highest evolution, highest timeline to manifest that, stop giving to that system. Stop working for it. But even more important than that, or equal, is don't allow children to be put into that induction that allows an abduction of the spirit, right? Because then they're being replaced. The spirit energy, the imagination, the empowerment, the senses are being replaced by what?
Yep.
By the demonic realm, the lower planes. So we have to get out of that trance. That's a negative trance. Your higher trance is when someone's channeling and in that imagination, creating art, speaking truth. Everyone has a higher purpose here. So to be in tune with that purpose, follow these words.
No, and it's so important, because, and a lot of people say they can't do that because, they have to do it according to the government and so on, but there's ways around it.
Oh,
I
man.
mean,
Reptilians.
It's just convenient. It's convenient, And a lot of people see schools as babysitters because they need to go and work. And that's all just perpetuating the same old cycle. Yeah.
Great word. What you just said. Very true. Everything.
Yeah.
Right. I want to say one last thing. Vibration is what dictates what time is. So the vibration was so high and the transmission was so clear and open, because I can sense you allow an open space. And I also allow, because that's the most important thing, allowing an open space for the universe to work. There's no one here doing this. Because that's when ego comes in. If you're claiming it, I am doing this, me. The removal process of the me, it's not an unhealthy disassociation. It's a healthy cleansing of the false. So that comes back to when God says, I am. So you're going to be more in that space, energy, spirit energy, presence, connecting with your soul, connecting with your spirit energy, reawakening these senses, because what happens is then you adapt these higher energies to work through you. And then things like time start to break down. And that's when you create true empowerment, because then time will not control you anymore. Then countries, people, groups, system does not control you once you step out of that illusion known as time, known as the false learning system. Construct. Don't be lost in that. That's your freedom. When you get out of that, you're already, if you know the amount of empowerment that happens on an internal level, because we're always externalizing ourselves. But if you internalize yourself, then you will be liberated in this life.
But it is so difficult if you're surrounded by the 90% of the family that are the NPCs to get into that space. You actually have to be out of that energy. You can't do it within that energy field. Yeah.
Very true. You have to get out of that perplexing program. It's here to perplex you. It's here to confuse you. Distortion, disconnect. They are shadows. Most of the time, not all of them, most. You have to be very clear about that. What do they represent in your life? That is where the truth is. What does it represent? And anyone can figure that out very quickly. You don't have to, take forever with it. It's pretty obvious. Patterns, program.
Yeah, that's it.
Everything's coded here. The whole system. It's all coded, numbers, words, themes, trauma, coding. So notice the coding, because I see particles. So that's an advantage I have. That's why I've moved at such a fast speed with my awakening in these recent years. And I didn't in this interview even speak about death and what I've seen in other realms so much, which we can get to next time.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Well, thank you again. Thanks so much. And I hope you have a good day, because it was an early start.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep well.